College football 2023 live pick show. We do this every week at Wednesday, right around 12:30, between 12:30 and 1 Eastern time. And these guys both right near the top of the leaderboard in college football this season, hitting the cover off the ball in college football. I'm not on the leaderboard, but I did have a winning week last week, and the week before, well, frickin' got screwed in overtime, or else I'd be right up there with them. How's it going, Chris?
Going well. Yeah, like you said, it's just been a solid start, but again, it's still a marathon, not a sprint. Off to a nice start, but still a long season ahead of us. Still only can't believe though we're already a third of the way through the regular season after this week. Once we get through conference championships and bowl games as well. So
Yep, two
yeah,
more
it's
months. More months of regular season.
it,
That's it.
the calendar. You blink and it goes by, but it seems to go even faster when you're talking about football season. So, but I'm excited for this week's card. I really like it.
All right. How about you, Ron? Are you excited for this week's card?
I sure am, and I like the fact that we're at the part of the year where we get like 7, 8 FBS college football matchups during the week. On Thursday, Friday, we got 3 today and 4 tomorrow. So, lots of action. Obviously Saturday, but the weeknight games are fun to watch too.
Yeah, I think tonight's games leave a little to be desired in my book. I know they're up your alley, but not necessarily up mine. Generally, I don't mind some of these lesser seen teams, but I don't know, Western Kentucky I just find offensive. Tulsa and Temple,
These are my guys.
we softened them up for them. Softened up Temple for their ass. They did score the garbage touchdown. Honest. Anyways, we'll get right into it. Friday night college football action. It's Utah up against Oregon State. Ron's been pretty critical of this Utah team so far, but the Utes have answered, going 4-0, including a really about as one-sided as a 14-7 game can be last week against UCLA. It was absolute domination. Chris, before Ron gets a chance to take over this matchup, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Oregon State here. I've said before, I think Reeser, one of the more underrated home field advantages in all of college football. The Beavers have really made Corvallis a tough place to go on the road and win. And Oregon State's played fairly well this season. Granted, against it hasn't been the toughest schedule and the toughest game of the season. Um, they had last week. They unfortunately fell short against Washington State, 3-point road favorites. But that was on the road against a Washington State team that I'm pretty high on. And Utah, I want to see what Cam Rising's status is going to be coming into this game. Because, outside of that, Utah, they've been solid defensively. The offense has only scored 24 or less in the 3 games against FBS competition. So I think Oregon State wins this one, 28-24 at home. I'm going to go with Oregon State laying the points.
Ron Romanelli.
Yeah, I agree with Chris, and I agree with much of what he said. It's a different play. Utah is a different team on the road. We saw their only road game this year at Baylor, facing a backup quarterback. Didn't cover the spread, and they barely got the outright win in that game. And the defense for Utah has been great, but when you look at the offense, they've yet to eclipse 440 yards in a game this season, while Oregon State's done that in every game this year. So I think Oregon State is the much better offense. Like Chris said, Corvallis, really tough place to play. I think Oregon State takes this game. I'm going to take them and lay the points.
I tell you what, man, you guys have definitely been kicking my ass this college football season, but one games that you haven't been kicking my ass is in the Utah games, where I believe Ron's been against Utah every single game. And I tell you, I really have very
I'm
little
2-2.
faith. I have very little faith in DJU against this Utah defense. We are getting the hook here at plus 3.5 with Utah, and I think this game is going to be a nail biter, smash mouth game. Last week, Utah defense just dominated UCLA. I mean, they could not move. They were in a box and could not get out of it. UCLA scored with about a minute left to go in that game against Utah to bust up the shutout. They went for the onside kick. Utah easily recovered, and they just took a couple knees, and the game was over. But, yeah, if there's a quarterback that can blow a home winning streak, it's definitely DJU. And I'm going to give Utah at least the nod with the points. I'll probably put a little something on the money line as well, just to fade these guys. Really is what it really comes down to.
All right, don't be starting. We're only 5 minutes into this show.
Fading your ass. I'm only here to fade this guy all the time, man. Professional YouTube troll. Up next, another team that Ron hates, Kentucky, up against Florida. Ron, what do you think of Coach Stoops, who always is a fast starter?
Yeah, I do hate Kentucky, but this is a tough matchup. So this is one of the better rivalry. I think one of the more underrated rivalries in college football, and it's always an interesting matchup. But to me, I'm going to lean towards Florida here. I would have liked to get more points here, and it looks like the line's dropped to now 1.5. I just think the Gators are the better team, and I don't trust the quarterback play for Kentucky. I wasn't a fan of Devin Leary at NC State. I haven't really been in love with him at Kentucky either. The defense has been solid, but I think this is no doubt about it the toughest team that Kentucky's played this year. While Florida is, definitely more battle tested, taking on Utah on the road, playing Tennessee. The Gators on the road for the second time this year. The first game was not the best, the first road game, but I like the Florida Gators here. I think they're the better team.
By the way, in that Utah game, Nate Johnson and Cam Rising have been splitting reps. This week. So I think Nate Johnson adds a different wrinkle there. I think he'll see time either way in that game. But anyways, Kentucky is just notoriously fast starters under Stoops. They usually get to 6-0, and that's when the wheels usually start to fall off the cart. So Florida, I think, just catching them in a bad spot here. Definitely, we've seen Ethel Mertz pick things up a little bit. He's not just dancing around the kitchen with Fred anymore. He's put it together against Tennessee, but I just don't know if I trust the Gators on the road. And I'm still not sold on Billy Napier. I'm going to take Kentucky here. Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to take Kentucky. I think we're just going to take them on the money line. Just rather than lay the 1.5. I just think, this is a tough spot for Florida to go out on the road, take on a Kentucky team that I'll agree with Ron hasn't played anybody. This is going to be the toughest team that they've played so far. But I like the spot for Graham Mertz against Tennessee when he pulled off the win a couple weeks ago. Don't know if I love it here again, going out on the road to take on a Kentucky team that's got explosive plays offensively. I think they're just going to try to stop the run and force Graham Mertz to beat him through the air, which Mertz hasn't been able to do overly consistently over the course of his college career. So give him Kentucky in this one on the money line.
We move to Evanston, where Northwestern takes on an undefeated Penn State team. Penn State nationally ranked, but they play Michigan and Ohio State this year, so certainly going to have to earn their way to any kind of Big Ten title game. And those other teams will have to earn it through to Penn State. I didn't love the way Penn State played last week. I thought they won, they were convincing, all those things, but I didn't love them, But Northwestern beat Minnesota. You knock off the Flexter, and put up a lot of points doing so. They're going to get housed. I'm going to take Penn State big. Chris?
Yeah, I think I'm starting to shift a lot heavier towards Penn State here. Northwestern, they've got some experienced quarterback play with Ben Bryant, but outside of that game against Minnesota last week, Bryant hadn't been playing well. I mean, he hadn't eclipsed the 200 passing yard mark. I think he's just up against it here, even at home against Penn State. I like Drew Aller. Aller hasn't been very explosive either, but he's been consistent, and I think that Penn State just runs all over Northwestern in this one as well. So I'm gonna go with Penn State in this one as well, 28+.
Yeah, I think this could be kind of considered a letdown spot for Northwestern. That was a nice comeback, upset, outright win for him, and I think it's also important to note that Ben Bryant was, pretty banged up at the end of that game. He was limping all over the field, but give him credit, like 400 passing yards, and he led the team to the comeback victory. But to me, we still, like Chris mentioned, he hasn't done it, a consistent rate for Northwestern, for Cincinnati, Eastern Michigan. So I do think Penn State, the toughest defense that Northwestern and Bryant has faced in a long while. And, the Penn State offense has not been that explosive recently, but I still think it's going to be good enough. I think this is a game where if Penn State goes up by, 2-3 early touchdowns, early, Northwestern doesn't have the answers to come back. I think it'll just be a rout in the end. So I'll take Penn State and lay the points.
All right. A lot of talk about this game going around on the internet. Syracuse up against Clemson. Sharp seemed to be all over Syracuse in this game. Ron?
It's a tough game, in my opinion. I think this has always been a fun series to watch. When I was a kid growing up, Syracuse was always my favorite team, and they even though the football programs it hasn't been great in history, they've always been competitive against Clemson. We saw the upset a few years back, and it's really tough to play at that Carrier Dome, and it's just a situation where I just don't know if I love this Clemson offense enough to get it done. Syracuse, they've made a lot of improvements defensively. Garrett Schrader is a game changer at quarterback, a dual threat option. To me, Clemson it has the better defense, but Clay Klubnik has just been the play calling was very questionable last week against Florida State. The offense has been questionable. I think they'll be able to run the football better here, but at the Carrier Dome, it's going to be a packed stadium. I just wouldn't want to give Syracuse this many points, so I'm going to take the orange here plus the points.
I think, with everyone putting their, back on Clemson, I think maybe rating them off a little too early. I think Klubnik is probably a bit of a flop at QB. I think the expectations were so high coming in. And, sometimes these number one overall quarterbacks, they just fall flat on their face. I mean, we had quite a few of them at Miami that did. So I know it for a fact. We had Brian Forte. We had Jeff George. We had, who was the other guy? Ryan something. We've had, I think, 4 of them. None of them panned out. Not one. So I know it happens. But Clemson's just got a lot of talent elsewhere. I think this one comes down to a turnover game. And I think Clemson, what's an area where they haven't been so great this year is the turnovers. I'm going to take Clemson. I think they create some turnovers and make it happen. Chris?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Syracuse here. I'd like to see if this number gets to 7, or maybe even 7.5 if some late steam
I think
pushes
it's going
it.
the other way. I think it's going the other way.
It's going towards Syracuse.
Yeah.
I still I'll lean towards Syracuse for now. This is the the fewest amount of points that Syracuse has been an underdog in any of the last. God, we're going back 10 years at least now. Syracuse is 7-2 against the spread in the last 9 meetings. The last 2 meetings have been decided by a combined 9 points. And while when I first think of Garrett Schrader, I think of him as more of a dual threat quarterback that prefers to run the football. But this Syracuse pass offense is top 25 in passing yards per game. On Clemson's defense, it's the one area you can really attack more than anything. So I'm with Ron. I'm not sure I trust Cade Klubnik on the road. It's going to be a hostile environment. I think Syracuse is going to be sky high for this one. I think this is another tight game. Wouldn't be surprised if Clemson won it on the road, but I think 6.5 might be too many. So I'm going to take Syracuse plus the points.
Go to Jerry World, where Arkansas takes on Texas A&M. Always neutral sider for this one. The Hogs 2-2 after dropping games to BYU and LSU back-to-back weeks. The Aggies just that lone loss to Miami. Other than that, they've looked pretty good. Chris, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, that's why I'm sticking with Texas A&M here. I'm not a huge KJ Jefferson fan, and I do like how Texas A&M has looked up to this point. They crushed Auburn last week, got their revenge after that season-ending loss to Auburn last year, and this is going to be more of a home game for Texas A&M and Arkansas. I know Arkansas tends to travel fairly well, but yeah, I think Texas A&M just ends up being too much this one. There's really, you look at the schedule now, a couple of the opponents were soft, but that loss to Miami, not looking so bad now, just with how good Miami's been so far. So I'm looking for Texas A&M to win this one by a touchdown, 31-24. So give me Texas A&M in the points.
Ron?
Yeah, over the last couple of years, Arkansas has had their moment, like a big game moment. Last year, they went 3-0 to start the year. Then they played Texas A&M neutral site, lost that game by 2 points, but then went on to lose the next 2 games to Bama and Mississippi State in blowout fashion. Year before, they were 4-0 to start the year. They get their game at Georgia. They get blown out in that game. They lose two more games in a row against Ole Miss and Auburn. So Arkansas has had a history of now losing, going on these losing streaks in these big games. And I don't really love their chances here. I haven't liked the way the Razorbacks have played defensively, especially last week, giving up over 500 yards. I think A&M's better on both sides of the ball, so I'm going to take the Aggies at a reasonable price.
I'm with you on Texas A&M. I know Miami's not getting any credit for beating them whatsoever, and I don't expect to get it. But Texas A&M is the type of team that Miami beats, and then at some point they jump Miami in the standings with the same record. We see it all the time, but I just like the way the Aggies are playing. I think that getting Bobby Petrino in to run the offense is a good idea. I think Jimbo Fisher needed another set of eyes, and it's like I think also it kind of pushed him a little bit to be a better coach and to be more of a head coach than trying to fragment himself, because when you got Petrino there, the next word that follows that is interim head coach Bobby Petrino if you don't watch out. So I think that you take the Aggies here. I just love that pass rush. I like teams that can really rush the passer, and I think that defensive line against Jefferson is probably where it all comes unraveled for the Hogs.
You think there's any worry about Weigman being done for the season? Now you have to turn to Max Johnson.
I think the defense is the story there.
Defense is story? Okay.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think
I was
improved.
SEC
Max Johnson
experience.
sucks. I mean, we know that. He sucks.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, he has SEC experience. We'll say that.
Yeah, true.
Is that kind of experience good experience? Is experience on your back good experience? I mean, that's really basically what it is.
I'd rather experience than no experience if the talent's not there.
Sauce brought this up about Auburn last week. He said, Auburn's straight trash. Anyways, so I guess we'll find out. We go to the next game. Little luster off of this one. Colorado takes on USC. Last week I think the Colorado faithful, the new fan, all that stuff got way ahead of themselves against. I think what happened in that game for the Colorado backers and the new college football fans and all that stuff is that they just didn't understand it. Like Outson Stadium, and it just like went right past them. It's just like they couldn't believe that could possibly be that tough of a building. Well, it is. I mean, it's known as being a very tough building because it is a very tough building. And believe it or not, I think this is a much better spot for Colorado than that spot last week against the Ducks. They play against a sieve defense, which they love to do. And USC, I think, is going to score a ton of points on them. I see that 73.5 out there. I think 84 is probably where the number should be in this game. I think we see an over. I think we could see over 60 points in the first half of this game. I think this is the shootout. I don't know which way it goes in the end, but I think this game is going to be a absolute offensive, basically flag football shootout. Chris?
Yeah, I'm taking Colorado in the points in this one. Like you said, that last week was just a terrible spot for Colorado. They had played 3 straight, I don't want to say high profile games, but they had a ton of attention on them in each of those 3 games. First taking on TCU, the defending national runners up, and they played Nebraska and Colorado, the Colorado State rivalry thing, and then you go to Oregon and Autzen, and it was just a bad spot. But this one, like you said, against a Civ USC defense that's given up 28 to Arizona State of all teams, 28 to San Jose State earlier this season. Yeah, they scored 42 or more in all 4 games, but we've seen Colorado be able to put up some points themselves this season. I think this one is going to be a shootout, like you said. I think Colorado keeps it within the number.
Ron.
Yeah. Sometimes I get sad when I go last and you guys make all the good points on my plays. I like the over as well. I had its whole thing. I was like, people thought last week that Oregon Colorado was the shootout. This is your shootout. I think it makes sense. I agree with both these guys. USC, their defense on paper, 20 points per game given up, not bad. 365 yards per game, not bad. The teams that they played, the 2 of the worst offenses in the Pac-12. San Jose State, decent team there, but they gave up 28 points in that one. And then Nevada, who scored 19 points per game last season. This is the toughest offense. Even though Colorado's got big issues on the offensive line, they still have nice, skilled position players and a good quarterback in Sanders. So I think Colorado chips in here. I think USC scores at will. We saw that Colorado defense not really going to hold up. So, we see this total, despite last week's game going well under with Colorado, this total's even steeper at 74.5, 73.5. I like the over in this one big.
At home. Auburn against Georgia. Chris, this one is you. Auburn's straight trash.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm leaning towards Georgia here. there is some concern about the clock rules for new teams or for the teams like to run the football, and top 5 teams this season I think are like covering at like a 30% clip, but none of those teams had to play Auburn when you're the Georgia Bulldogs. This Auburn team is awful. I still think they should have lost that game against Cal. We saw what Auburn was, what they were against Texas A&M last week, and I think this is the spot where Georgia finally unloads a can of whoop ass on a conference opponent here. I'm going to take Georgia big. I might extend this one to 20.5.
Ron.
I don't know. I'm going to lean towards the home team here in Auburn. I mean, Auburn's not been good, but I mean, Georgia's 1-3 against the number, I believe, and they haven't really been impressive, in my opinion. Giving up 336 yards to UAB. I mean, that's a UAB program that's completely rebuilding. A lot of new players on offense, and you give up over 300 yards. It's not what you want to see if you're a Georgia defense that last year when they played non-conference opponents like Samford, they give up 128, Kent State 281, even Missouri 294. So I think this Georgia defense not as strong as where we've seen in years past, and we know the offense, is solid. But Auburn at home, the home team in this series has actually done really well against the spread and straight up. So I'm going to take the points. We're getting a lot of points with Auburn.
All right, we move on. Oh no, it's my turn. I'm going to take Georgia. I'm going to lay the points with Georgia in that one. Auburn just sucks. And I think Georgia, like what Chris said, I think this game, even if Georgia offense doesn't get rolling, 24-3 maybe, type thing. I just don't see it. I don't see Auburn doing much. 24-6 still gets it done. I think it's so hard to three-peat. It's impossible to three-peat. It's like everyone always thinks it's so easy to reload. All it takes is a couple of highly ranked recruits that don't pan out. And it's happened to everybody, and I say it every week on the show, and I say it every year. Is that you go back to the late '90s, and it was Florida State was never going to lose. You go back to the early 2000s, Miami was never going to lose. You go to the mids, USC was never going to lose. You go to keep going, and it just happens because it's almost impossible to just keep reloading. Eventually, it gets you. You just lose all that depth. Man, that Nolan Smith is just unbelievable. That guy, one of the best rookies I've ever seen in the NFL on the defense side of the ball. This guy's going to be like a Hulk if he stays healthy. Did you see him against the Bucs the other night? Man, decapitated. You know what I mean? It's like, whoa. That's like, you think to yourself, it's like, that's how you draft a guy with a broken leg in the first round. It's when he's like that. It's like, anyways, Kansas against Texas, Ron, in Austin.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Jayhawks. I would have liked to get that 17 points, but even 16, anything more than 2 touchdowns, I'm willing to take with the Jayhawks. I think that this team has improved defensively, still potent offensively. Mitch is going to mention Sarkisian and how his teams are always overvalued and overrated, and that's even more so after the big wins they've got.
And unfocused.
And, after the big cover last week and the win outright at Alabama, I think this is a perfect sell high spot for Texas. So give me the points with Kansas.
In all fairness, this is one of the better Texas teams I've seen, at least as far as on the field talent, because they actually have a quarterback. It's been a long time since Texas had a quarterback, which is pretty amazing considering how many great quarterbacks come from the state of Texas. But the thing is that, I don't see it. The more wins Texas has, the more I see a losing streak on the way. I think they lose the Red River. I think they lose this. I think they have a chance to lose this one outright. I think focus is always a problem with Sarkisian, and nothing destroys like a team like with a bad coach and a dual threat quarterback, and I think that's what's going to happen here. I think Kansas is going to dance. Taking Kansas on the money line. Chris.
Yeah, I'm going to take Kansas in the points as well in this one. Like you said, Texas, they got the Red River rivalry up next week. So, do I think that you can look past Kansas at 4-0? No, I don't think they're a classic look ahead spot. But part of me doesn't think that maybe Texas takes Kansas seriously. I don't know. Maybe I'm outside by thinking that, but this is a Kansas team that's legit. They've scored 31 plus in all their games this season. They took on a tough BYU team at home. Team that always can give anybody fits. 34 points on Illinois. I think they can keep this one respectable. Last year, ironically enough, when Kansas had their best team in a while, um, they got routed 55-14 at home by Texas. But in the past, Kansas beat Texas 57-56 in 2021, lost by 2 in 2019, lost by 7 in 2018, all when Texas was the far better team. And I think that Kansas can at least keep this one within 2 scores. I'm going to go with Kansas in the points.
Maybe Steve Sarkisian's one of those people searching my LinkedIn profile. Got Nebraska up against Michigan. This is a real crap game. This is another one of these Jim Harbaugh specials. I don't know how Michigan does it. They either have either a million home games and then when they go on the road, it's just against always the worst teams. So here it is. This Nebraska team is just not ready to win yet. I think eventually they will be, and they're going to be a better team than what we see now. But they're not ready right now, and Jim Harbaugh is an asshole. I think they cover the 17 here on the road in Lincoln. Chris?
With Michigan here as well. The quarterback situation is just really murky for Nebraska, and even then, even if all the quarterbacks were healthy, Jeff Sims has been a turnover machine. Harburg, not a viable number one for me either. And I talked to you before about Michigan sort of playing with their food and sort of just being, lax and not really worrying about covering big numbers. But this is the smallest number that we've seen with Michigan this season. And I think they're just a far better team here. I think they win this one by 21 plus. Going to go with Michigan laying the points.
I'm going to go with a stinky home dog with a low total game, below 40 points now at 38.5, getting 16.5, 17 points, shop those lines. But there's really not a lot of wiggle room here with those with the spread in total. I think Nebraska's defense is good enough, really good against the run this year, 1.8 yards per carry given up. Michigan's offense hasn't been that explosive. They've yet to hit more than 35 points in a game, which is rare for Michigan in these non-conference games. We saw them hit 50 plus the first 3 games last year, so I'll take the points with Nebraska.
No concern about the turnovers?
Nah, I mean, at least the guy has a good coach at Matt Rule, and home dog and a low total game. It's enough for me.
LSU and Ole Miss, Chris, go to the SEC. LSU squeaker last weekend against the Hogs. Ole Miss, well, public doggy got its tail smashed between its legs, right, or something like that.
Something like that.
Bad dog.
Yeah.
Dog has messed the carpet for the last time.
I think I'm probably just going to stick with the over in this thing. I think it's going to be just fairly high scoring, not a ton of defense being played here. I still haven't been able to fully get there with LSU. Defensively, I think Lane Kiffin offense can have some success in this matchup. I think LSU can score a ton of points as well on Ole Miss. I think this game gets closer to 75 or 80. I'm going to go with the over, but I'm not loving this game.
What do you think about basically the LSU loss to Florida State, not even counting in the rankings?
I don't get it. Now I'm starting. I mean, I've started to sort of see it be influenced by you by saying the rankings don't mean a whole lot, and you start to see examples like that. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
Florida State close loss to Boston College, or close win over Clemson, hurts them, but LSU's loss to Florida State benefits them on a last second win as a 17.5 point favorite and a last second field goal. They move up.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Ron?
Yeah, the over's 5-1 in the last 6 between these two, so I think it's worth a look. But I'm looking at Ole Miss in this game. I think it's a much better matchup and a spot for them against LSU than it was last week. And the home team's been dominant in this series, 9-1 against the spread, 8-2 straight up the last 10 meetings. I agree with the guys at LSU's, or at least Mitch, I think, is overvalued, and I don't understand, the ranking system there. So I'm going to take Ole Miss.
The only thing I worry about is teams the week after playing Alabama generally are pretty bruised up, and Ole Miss, while it's seen as like this high-powered offense and Lane Kiffin and all that other stuff, they're a run-heavy offense. I mean, they run a lot too, so it's like it's not like they're one-dimensional. LSU, I don't know, man. I just not sold. I'm not sold on Brian Kelly. Just not. And I think, when he's at Cincinnati and plays against the AAC, or he's at Notre Dame and he plays Navy and Army, he's great. But it's like when he's played against the bigger, better teams, he's never held up. In fact, he's lost to Florida State, both openers in his 2 years at LSU. And I don't care what the rankings or polls said, If the team that beat you looks bad, then that should make you look bad. And if the team that beat you looks good, that should make you look good. And I think, it's the Texas A&M Miami treatment, inverted with LSU Florida State. That's all it is. Anyways, a lot of this will play out on the field. LSU's going nowhere. They're trash. I'm going with Ole Miss. I hate Brian Kelly, man. I'm not one of those Brian Kellys, such a, he's always got an excuse. My favorite Brian Kelly moment was the Alabama National Championship game. They interviewed him at halftime. He was a shaken mess. It's all Alabama out there. No shit, Brian. We're watching the game. We know it's 30-0. It is all Alabama out there. You think? 30 zip. An idiot. Notre Dame and Duke. Who's up?
You got all worked up there, Mitch. I think it's my turn. I'm going to go with the over in this game. I think we see, both of these defenses have been strong this year, but I think we see this game open up because you got two really strong offensive lines. Duke's only given up 2 sacks all season on 1.8% of the passing plays. So they've been able to run the ball for 5.6 yards per carry. Leonard's had plenty of time in the pocket, and I think that's useful in a game like this. And Notre Dame's only given up 4 sacks the whole season. 3% of their passing plays have ended in a sack. 5.6 yards per carry. Hartman's hitting over 70% completion. 2 really strong offenses with strong offensive lines. Give me the over.
Taking Notre Dame in this thing, I think. Don't even think twice about it. I don't think the home field is too big of an advantage here for Duke at all. I think Notre Dame, if you go to Notre Dame, you're playing big road games at night. I mean, that's just basically what you signed up for when you went there. And, Sam Hartman's probably had a career at Duke, playing against Duke Blue Devils in his career. We saw Notre Dame go to Tobacco Road already this season. This is their second trip. They should probably know their way around pretty well. All the same haunts. I mean, they're not far at all from NC State. I'm going to take Notre Dame in this one. They throttled NC State. I think it's a very similar game to this one. Notre Dame by 14 plus.
I'm trying to pull up Hartman. Yeah, Hartman.
Your Sam Hartman. Your Sam Hartman picture collection.
Maybe
we'll just take a look. Take a look at your bedroom door.
In 2 games against Duke, Hartman's thrown for 749 yards, 6 touchdowns, and a pick. Last year, though, 42-26 loss to Duke at Duke. So maybe see the case to be made for the Blue Devils, but I'm leaning towards the over with Ron here. I think there's going to be some points scored in this game. Duke has held 3 of their 4 opponents to 7 points this season, but none of those teams were Notre Dame. Granted, the game against Clemson, was just a comedy of errors for Clemson in that game. They made a ton of mistakes now, and they should have well more than 7 points. And I think that Duke can score on Notre Dame as well. So I'm going to go with the over 52. I think this one gets closer to 60.
Mississippi State up against Alabama. Mississippi State really not quite the same team that we've seen in recent years when they were under Mike Leach. I think what's happening here is they're trying to get away from the air raid offense, but now they can't throw at all. So it's like, it's feast or famine. Unfortunately, famine not too good. I don't like the hook in this game at all. I like the under is what I really like. I think that, Alabama has struggled to move the ball, and Mississippi State might be in business because of that. I don't like the hook, but it's like if I was forced to pick a side, I would lay the hook. I don't care. I'd rather lay the hook than take Mississippi State, but I think I don't have to, so I'll just take the under because I think that I don't think Mississippi State scores. I think it's going to be similar to Bama's game last week against Ole Miss, where they just kind of say, yeah, we're good. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't love that hook. I would rather play the under if I had to. Will Rogers, he threw for 487 yards last week, but he only had 1 touchdown and an interception. So the Mississippi State offense was having a hard time finishing drives through the air. I don't think they're going to be able to do much against this Alabama offense. And Will Rogers, prior to that, like you said, shifting away from the air raid offense, he'd only thrown for 227 yards as a high through the previous 3 games. I think he's going to have trouble against this Alabama defense. But we've talked ad nauseum about how bad Alabama's quarterback play has been. I don't see this one getting to 47 points. I can see a 27-10 kind of game here or something like that. So give me the under 47.
Yeah, these teams play every season, and since 2008, I believe the under is 12-2 with a push. So heavy to the under, only 2 overs since 2008 between these two. And I agree, both these guys. I think Alabama's defense the real deal, but the quarterback play is just where you have the issue. That's why I would be hesitant laying the points. It does look like there's one flat 14 at circa, so maybe you can take it there, but mostly 14 and a halves and 115 out there. But
That's
I'll
not a
take the
good
under.
sign.
No, that's not a good sign.
That's not a good sign.
Not at all.
Those you
If you're a
keep the
Bama
score at
bettor.
home.
Yeah.
If you have one
Not
book that's at the lower number, that's not the one you want. You want it to
For the
be
favorite,
DraftKings or someone like that. You don't want it to be that one.
No. And that's also got 47 as the total, and 46 and a half out there mostly. So I'll go with the under.
3 unders. And our final game on the card, it's a Pac-12 battle. Arizona 3-1 on the season. They knock off Colorado. They're gonna have a shot to be bowl eligible this year. That would be something for the Wildcats. Though I do think they should change their color scheme to earth tones and change their name to Los Serpientes. Chris?
Man, this one. All right, I'm going to take Washington here. Not my strongest play on the card. I like the situation for Washington a lot more than I like Arizona's right now. Jaden DeLora questionable for this game with a calf issue, and if he can't go, it's going to be a big problem for Arizona to try to be able to match score for score with Washington, which I think is going to be hard enough to begin with. Jalen McMillan was the big question mark for Washington, but I think he's probable for this game. So the way I see it, I just think Washington wins this one by 21 plus. I don't want to say they've been undervalued all season by odds makers, but I thought this line when I first saw this matchup, I thought it was going to be in the 20s. So take a bit of a discounted line. I'm going to go with Washington laying the points here.
Ron?
I'm going to disagree there with the fact that it's a discounted line. I think Washington, with how well they've played, there's no doubting they're a good team. I think they're at the point where they are getting into that overvalued conversation. And, the offense has been amazing, but the defense is still, I think, questionable. And we saw them give up 500 yards and 32 points to California of all teams. So now on the road, I wouldn't want to lay this many points with the defense that I don't really trust. So I'll take the points with Arizona.
I think I'm with you. I'm not a Panics guy. I've never been a Panics guy. I just think Tom Allen rubs off on you, and there's not a lot you can do to erase that stench from your body. It's almost like a skunk. You could throw some tomato juice on it, but he's still been skunked, and he's been Allen. I'm gonna take Arizona in this one as well. So I just think that Arizona has the stigma going. They still have great athletes on this team. Arizona's always gonna have. Any games that are that we did not discuss, Chris, that you would like to make a statement about? There's a lot out there. That's kind of like there's some meat on the bone out there this week.
Yeah, there definitely is. I really like Air Force against San Diego State. Only laying 10.5. I thought that number could at least be in the mid teens, maybe close to 13.5 or even higher. I just like the way Air Force is running the football. I'm not sold on the San Diego State defense at all. I think Air Force definitely a good look for this week as well.
Ron, anything for you that's not a premium pick that you just think is a good slot?
Well, it might be a premium pick, but I'll talk about it anyway. Eastern Michigan, to me, is just like a system play when they're on the road. They've just been so good as a road underdog, I should say. As a road underdog, this team's been one of the more profitable teams in college football, and Central Michigan's coming off the nice upset victory at South Alabama. So perfect letdown spot. Add the fact that EMU's so good as a road dog. I think you could take the points, but I think EMU could win that game outright.
For me, my added will be, we talked about Kansas, Texas, a little bit of a look-ahead spot for Texas. I think the same thing for Oklahoma, a little bit of a look-ahead spot. it's kind of Oklahoma bouncing back from a rougher season last year. Venables, the first time he's really had the gears in motion here for Oklahoma, and the Red River is gonna be a very big game for him next week. They gotta be looking ahead. Here comes Iowa State and getting almost 3 touchdowns here. I think that Iowa State at least covers in what's probably seen as a very lackluster performance for the Sooners. So take Iowa State. They've been battle tested. They've played a pretty tough schedule coming in. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. I'm looking at the card. It's not the sexiest card in the world, but the thing is, we've got conference play this week, so there's a lot of good games. Tennessee, South Carolina, West Virginia, TCU. All these are reasonable games out there. There's no FCS except Oregon against Stanford. That's what do you think the Colorado effect's going to be on Oregon this week? Probably making Oregon a tougher bet. I did the video for Memphis Boise. I thought that was an interesting matchup. Illinois Purdue. A lot of them out there. Houston Texas Tech. Central Florida plays an interesting one too, right? Big 12 opponent. Baylor. Not bailing on Baylor yet. Thanks, everyone. Have a winning week. We'll see you guys next Wednesday and every Wednesday throughout the season. It's week 5. I believe there's 13, 14 weeks. Plus, we'll do a couple bowl specials in our last year of a 4-team playoff. Mm-hmm. Go Marlins.